All right. Well, after a hiatus and all of the shenanigans that it took to get this episode recording, it's to review Playboi Carti's long anticipated album, Music. That's what it's called. And J Mac, I have a feeling is gonna have some things to say. So just to preface this Playboi Carti discussion, I wouldn't say each of us are diehard, like by any stretch.
Right.
Speaking of, I feel like there's some talent there that I recognize, a lot of originality. He's definitely changed the sound of what a lot of people are doing in hip hop. So kudos to him there. He's got some cool features. I like a few songs of his. So, um, personally, I wouldn't say I hate his music, even though, not a whole ton of it feels like I'm the audience for it. But, how about for you?
Um, Playboy has never been. Um, I, I've always hated Playboy Cardi. Let me put it like that.
Yeah.
Never,
Yeah.
never been a fan. Up until recently, um, I can get behind Timeless with him and The Weeknd. Solid song. He
Yeah.
actually sounds good, and I can understand what he's saying, so that's great. Um, I've kind of let off my hard feelings of so-called mumble rappers. I'm trying to get over that, but there is still a point where if I don't understand a single word you're saying, I don't care. I'm not gonna listen to you. I think it's garbage.
Yeah.
Like your production side could be phenomenal, but it's just not for me. It is what it is. Um,
Yeah.
going into this album, I'm still hyped up on Timeless. Such a great song, but I try. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I try to go into every album with a clean slate, open mind, no previous judgment given. I don't care what genre you are, who you are. If it's good music, it's good music. If it's bad, it's bad, and that's how it's gonna be. Um,
Right.
I will say when we dive deeper into it, you're not gonna see as much hate as I also anticipated there would be. So
Okay. Wow. Wow.
I'll say that. I'll say that.
Blow to hear that. But without further ado, let's jump into this thing, starting off as we do with the production side of things. This is an area of his that, and you kind of alluded to this. This is an area of his where I do feel he's held, even on the songs that I really don't love from him. I have a lot of respect for what he does on the production side of. He really has kind of popularized and brought into the mainstream that kind of hardcore rage trap sound. So much so that people like Travis Scott and Future and artists of that caliber are adopting that sound and making the most of it. And it's brought along with it so many just double ends of the spectrum, whether you're talking a great rage song in the mainstream like Fiend, or any number of things to the negative that Trippy Red has done in the past 3 or 4 years. Um, but on this record, I was pleasantly surprised again with a good majority of it. He brought that hardcore sound that I have a lot of respect for. A lot of those heavy, distorted beats with a lot of that thumping bass, just stuff that like to me is gritty and fun. And I feel like I'm not like a rager by any stretch, but like I have a
Right.
lot of that fun style and fun nature of that sound on the production side. But I will say this album is it's lengthy. If you go through, especially if you go through the Sorry for the Wait Deluxe, I mean you're talking 34 songs at an hour and a half runtime, which on a track by track basis really does like it's really not that long each song if you're only an hour and a half with 34 songs. um but they do start to get a little repetitive, they start to blend together. There's a lot of tracks particularly like I would say if we're breaking the album into quarters, like the second fourth of the album from after the intro stuff to the halfway point gets really, really repetitive and monotonous. But he does break that up quite nicely on the back half, introducing a few kind of pop style sounds, and a few diverse instrumentals on the back half, which I have a lot of respect for. It's a fun aspect of the album. I did give it a 7 because I really like that area for the most part, but it did tend to get a bit repetitive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. Same kind of thing. I can always give my hat off to Playboy when it comes to a production side. It's not necessarily my favorite type of production. That's more personable, but like I'm
Yeah.
more of that old West Coast, like Dre. I love Kanye's production, Travis Scott's, but Playboy's is very unique to him and very like almost like very beautifully orchestrated to be intentionally chaotic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that works out really, really well in his favor. For those who do go to things like ragers and raves and like that kind of atmosphere, you're not really looking for any kind of lyrical connection to anything,
Sure.
which
Yeah.
totally fine. But with
Yeah.
this kind of an album, you're going to be dancing, you're going to be jumping up and down, you can get into the mosh pit, like, and I can recognize that and respect that. I did enjoy a good majority of the album's production. I thought it was very different to what I'm usually listening to, but it was a good kind of switch up. um I do agree at times it does get pretty repetitive, but with that being the only like flaw to it, with a majority of them being very unique to him and what he's doing on this album, I also gave it a 7.
Yeah, yeah, it's a solid area. This next category though is an area that I've heard from a lot of his fans is what they love about him. And I've never seen it. There's areas where I do like him, but talking about the vocal side of things, it's undeniable that he's a very unique voice in rap and in hip hop. And for someone who is such an iconic voice in modern hip hop, he's changed his vocal style so much over his short career, like relatively speaking. You know, he's not a 30-year guy like Eminem or Kanye West or anything like that. But in the 5-10 years that he's been really making popular mainstream music, he's switched it up so much, and it's been influential from the early kind of baby style sounds that you hear people like Baby Keem replicating on Donda, or switching over to a very bellowy, deep voice on stuff like Fiend and Type Shiz from Future and Metro's last album. Um, I was really curious to hear what he would do with this project because there's been so much diversity, and even lately he's been switching it up quite a bit from that heavier, deeper style to going back to a little bit more of a pop style melodic thing on Timeless. And there's a good balance across the album here. I feel like there's moments where he goes into that higher pitched stuff, and it works out in his favor. There's times where he does go into that lower, uh, kind of trap future style sound, if you want to call it that. And there's good moments on either front, but I will say there's too many times for me where the vocals on the album are the limiting factor when there's other areas of Playboi Carti's music that should be far and away the worst. Like you said, you're not
Yeah.
coming to Playboi Carti. So if the lyrics are the worst thing about the album, if vocally he sounds great and production wise he sounds great, I'm one that I can look past the lyrics for the specific style, right? If I'm going to listen to it in the gym, if we're just hanging out with the homies and having a fun time and we don't really care what we're listening to, that I'm cool with the lyrics not having any value or anything like that. But there's too often where the vocals are like cooked. They're
Yep.
way too auto, or they're way too over the top to either extreme, and it just doesn't work out. But overall, I was pleased with the variety because I feel like he's done good stuff in both realms in his career, and so hearing that on this one was that variety was cool for me. I did give it a 6.
Cool. Um, it blows my mind that Cardi fans think that one of the best sides to him is vocally. But once again, that's coming from somebody who's very into traditional old school rap, hip hop, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And so I didn't really understand what they're getting at until further along in my music journey. Up to this point, I can get behind everything that you just said. I don't hate the vocals. I actually think the vocals were pretty solid. I think the vocal mixing on a majority of the songs were phenomenal, especially to the point of what he's trying to do and what genre he's in.
Yeah.
Um, Granted, there's a couple here and there where I just couldn't stand, and that's me.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. I do think um, generally it's throughout the entire album, it's just solid work. Um, I find him more goofy and fun when it comes to vocals,
Yeah.
because of songs like Fiend, where the like just
Yeah.
making all these sound effects, and I
Yeah.
guess that's why I don't hate him as much because music has always been just an expression of who you are, what you're trying to portray, and whatever. So when you can have fun like that, and you're just kind of goofing off and like funny ad libs. Take Tyler the Creator, for example, in Ratata, he says, I'm a fish. Like, who else is doing that? It's
Yeah.
just straight up fun. And so I can appreciate that side of Playboy Cardi too. I gave vocals a 5, and that's more just personally. It's not my
Sure.
favorite, but I, it's pretty good, especially for being this early on into the year. Like, granted, I'm not saying he's The Weeknd or Childish Gambino or an Ariana
Yeah. Yeah.
Grande
Yeah.
with this magnificent. No, but it's cool. It's unique. It's him, and I can appreciate that aspect. So
Very cool. Wow. A lot more praise from you than I thought I was going to hear on
yeah,
the first. But jumping into an area that we're both passionate about, you probably a lot more passionate than I am in this context. Talking about the lyrical content on the album. I mean, we've both said it, and he's not a lyrical guy. You're never going to come to him for the lyrics, and to be honest, to an extent, that's part of the experience and the fun of an album from Playboi Carti. Of a song from Playboi Carti, the first like just instance of that context that comes to my mind is when you look at a song like Type Shiz that he did with Future and Travis on Future's last project, where he's like literally just saying nonsense. And you're like, I feel it. Like I'm like it's just fun, it's goofy, and so I like when it comes to an artist like this, who I'm not really coming to for their lyrical content. I'm really looking for two things to drop it down. One is just like outrageously egregious, like bad bars that are either questionable or just like way too over the top, corny, whatever it may be. Um, and the other thing is like anything that blows me away, like, whoa, okay, there's some vulnerability I never thought I'd get, or like that's actually a bar. It's like surprising. To sway me one way or the other. Unfortunately, there was a lot of the former and not too much of the latter on this project for me. There's just way too many bars where I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? Um, if I couldn't tell what he was saying, like if it's like to the point that you're like, did say that? Like, I don't know, but vibe, oh well. No, like he has to, like for some reason he enunciates whenever it's mega questionable on this project, and that features as well. Lil Uzi Vert is in the category on this album. But one that comes to the top of my head when I'm just thinking of these outrageously corny bars is on Good Credit, the track that he does with Kendrick on here. He has a bar where he says, I'm an alien off that Molly. I see stars. I see space. That's that's something. Um, That, I don't know what to say about that, but yeah, there's too many to pick from where it's later down. He says, "Pass out them boulders, moving them boulders." I mean, there's a lot of questionable content that I won't get into on this podcast. But, I gave um, like I said, it's not a zero because he's not a guy I come to lyrics for, but there was just too many to the point where it was like, okay, this is, yeah,
Yeah. What'd you end up giving it?
a three.
Okay. Much higher than me. I did give
Yeah,
it a one. Because even though I'm not looking for this crazy lyrical scheme and these double entendres and this really great story, even though I know I'm not looking for that, or will I find it from somebody like Playboi Carti? Um,
yeah,
I still feel like I should be able to give an album a full listen through and not have to question what he's saying in every line. I feel like some of it should be coherent enough to where I'm at least getting maybe half of the song. Like I can hear half of it lyrically. But the fact that I can't dissect anything that he's saying without reading lyrics, which I didn't read any of the lyrics, so this album was really just like that's all I'm really hearing throughout the album.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's what I'm giving it a dog for. It's just not coherent for 90% of the album. Um, so like I didn't know that he said those kinds of things. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Honestly, if I would have heard that or read that, I probably would have raised it up a little bit just because of how outlandish and funny that is. Um, but no, I just couldn't understand anything of it, which I would like to a little bit. So I gave it a one.
yeah. I mean, even on a track I like, later on, like "Wake Up Filthy," he. This is another one that I just thought of. Couple hits to your body. Now you smell. I maybe I'm not. Don't get it, but like I don't know. Going ahead to move on. This is typically at the point in the episode where we talk about a concept or a story or a theme. Really, the furthest you could maybe stretch it to say there's a theme with this one, with the idea of like music and I am music. Kind of have alluded to the fact that he's done so many styles and changed the sound in so many ways. And it really is just an opportunity on this project for him to showcase that ability in full effect, where in the past, top to bottom, for the majority, this one there's just all everything that he's done, even going so far to do something fairly mainstream pop sound on tracks like Rather Lie with The Weeknd, or We Need All the Vibes with Young Thug. There's moments where it's like, no, it's not Sabrina Carpenter, but it's like as pop as you get from someone in the hip hop realm like Playboi Carti, which was interesting to hear. But really, I've rated this one more on the vibe of the album, and just kind of how it feels to listen to the style and sound top to bottom. I did give it a five. And maybe that's a little harsh. I could see myself maybe raising this one up a bit, but it's so lengthy and it feels like there's so many throwaways for me to really feel like coherently as a project that this one was thematically or sound wise a success. Is it cool? Yeah. Is it interesting for me as someone who hasn't really heavily listened to a lot of his music on repeat throughout his career? Yeah, it's interesting to hear him do all these sounds, and so I appreciate it from that perspective. But it's my vibe just personally through most of it, so I did give it a five. And some cool content, but overall not really my go-to for sound.
Yeah. I ended up giving it a two, which seems harsh, but
Sure.
like you were saying, like the most that you can go to when it comes to some kind of concept or like story is, well, you're saying I am music, so in my and maybe this is really like really opinion based, but when I think I am music, I'm thinking let's put an album together where it's not like just I feel like there should be more genres and more experimenting with yourself. Like I think this should be more of a like a fun album, like instead of trying to be so locked into your main genre, which I'm not upset that he went with this trap rager kind of music. Like that's who he is, and I'm not mad that a
Sure.
majority of it is that way. But when you just get kind of pop music and that's kind of as far as you're going, you even get like a little bit of hip hop side with a song like Good Credit with Kendrick.
Yeah.
But like let me hear you really experiment. Go get Lil Yachty for some reason and do like an experimental track. Uh go get I mean, I don't think this is a good song or like what, but go get Trippy Red and MGK and try to come up with something different, like some more melodic, or I don't know. I just feel like when you're doing something that's such a big concept like I am music, let's try to get some real things go hit up Don Tolliver and make some kind of metal rock song. I feel like that would be lit actually. Like
Yeah.
I could see that being something huge.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
because like it's very opinionated, but I just even if I take that away, it just doesn't feel like it executed the way that it should have. That's why it's a two for me.
Yeah, and to kind of segue from what you're talking about right there, I agree with you. It feels relatively safe from a feature perspective for Playboi Carti just throughout his career. I don't know that this is the first collab that he's had with any of these artists, besides maybe Janae Aiko on the Backdoor track. But like it's all very in his wheelhouse and in these other artists' wheelhouse. And that's not like a total detriment to it. You know what I mean? Like I love artists, and to be honest, feature wise, I think every artist that appears as a feature kind of knocks it out of the park for the most part for me. Like even on tracks that I didn't particularly love, um like Twin Trim, for example, Uzi. I still thought Uzi sounded good and fit the vibe of the song very well. Future appears on here a handful of times, and every single time I feel like he just shows out from my personal taste. Travis Scott sounds fantastic. To be honest, and maybe it's a disservice because of the run he's been on, but Kendrick Lamar, I felt like it was a weaker performance of his in the past little while. And, I get he's trying to fit the vibe of the song. And so, like, it's all relative of how I'm looking at this. You know what I mean? Like, is it a bad
Yeah.
feature? Not like he's still good. He still makes the song interesting. It may still be a song I personally would listen to every once in a while. But just compared to like the DMX run, the Drake beef that he's done in the last little while, it's just not quite up to as good of content I'm familiar with him doing in the last. So there's that for what it's worth. Um, but I do. Oh, and Young Thug, another artist I wanted to shout out. I thought sounded fantastic. Fit very well along. Um, but yeah, I another point that kind of just knocks this category down a couple of pegs for me was just that it would be interesting to hear him do something a little more, and not even switching up the stylistic sound too much for my taste anyway. Like I was with the vibe for the most part, but just switching up the artists to something a little less safe that may be a little bit more of a gamble, whether that's something with is painfully mediocre most of the time, but every once in a while he knocks it out of the park, like Rick Ross, vocal
Yeah.
style. But like, does he have the caliber to do a Devil in a New Dress style feature? Absolutely. Like we've heard it from him. And even on that train, like, you know, maybe someone like Doechii or Nicki Minaj would have provided an interesting presence, or just if I'm kind of looking at these experimental, outrageous production style things like a Suicide Boys feature or um, JPEG Mafia, for example, I think could have done something just unique out there that would have been like, oh my god, what the heck is this song? But could have been fantastic potential. But all that's like splitting hairs for me. That's being nitpicky, just because that's what I tend to do. And so I did give the features an 8. I thought it was excellent for the most part on the feature presence, but room for a bit of.
Yeah, absolutely. This could feel a little low. The main reasoning is I had I had listened to this album 2 weeks ago now. Have not given it another listen just because of the length of it. And so my memory of how the features did exactly is a little shaky. But what I can say is it's currently at a 5. I do like that he brings on people like Lil Uzi, Travis Scott, uh, the weekend did good. I think the weekend's just not for me. I think that's what I've decided. I've really tried, guys. I really tried. Couldn't do it. But then like you said, Young Thug, Future. The only one that I felt was, like you said, weak was definitely Kendrick. I don't think it fit at all. I think Kendrick tried way too hard. I feel like it's like if you and your homie we're hanging out, and your homie's like, dude, here's this idea, and I'm really excited for it. And you're sitting there and you're like, this is an awful idea. It's not going to work in the slightest, but this is my homie. So I'm going to get super hyped with him and still try to help him execute this. And then it doesn't work out. And that's what I feel like it is
Yeah.
to me. Um, Granted, other people may think that's a wild take, that I am just completely out of my mind with that. I just don't think that it sounded good. I thought the ad libs, like what Kendrick was doing, was weird, and like I didn't care for it. Um, but like you said, everybody killed their respective role. So like I said, this is currently a 5. Definitely should
Sure.
probably be higher. But that would require me to listen to the entire album again, and I'm not up for that in this time of my life.
And that's all right. To each their own.
Right.
But to off here, talking about just the enjoyment, replay value. I mean, we've both kind of been up front that like this is really not our go-to for style of music. I think I tend to prefer this genre or this subgenre a bit more than you do. I feel like I do find some value in it. Every once in a while, there's a handful of tracks that stick out to me that I love that stick in my rotation. I do have respect for like breaking boundaries and trying to push something and doing something that other people aren't really doing, and certainly other people aren't doing it as well, even anywhere as nearly as well as him on a consistent basis when you're looking at people like Trippie Redd or Ken Carson or whoever else you want to throw in the category. But really, there's just too much content on here that I'm really not going to come back to. Like, am I really going to rather lie in when there's timeless? Probably not. Even a track
Yeah.
like um, Cardi doesn't really have a ton of presence, but adds some significant flair to it with the weekend. I prefer that over this track. But yeah, there's a few songs that I'll listen to for sure. I could see myself listening to. Like you, I don't really see this as an album that I come back to and listen to top to bottom, nor do I really feel like that's the purpose of it from, the experience that I feel like I've gotten, from listening to Playboi Carti. And so I gave it a 3, but again, a lot of that's just personal taste. I don't really feel like it's a significantly weak project in the rage rap scene, but it's just not for me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first time I'm higher than you on a Playboy Cardi rating. Um,
Wow.
I gave it a split in the middle 5.
Wow.
Um, yeah, kind of shocked
Crazy.
myself there. Um, because and I think Timeless kind of helped open that door for me to like be more accepting and enjoying the idea of what his music brings. Um, so I can definitely get down with a couple of the songs, and I said a couple, not one. So that's a huge step for me. So the fact that you like Playboy Cardi as his genre, like to be able to get somebody who's not for that kind of music really at all ever, I'm I'm shocked and I appreciate the fact that you could get me to rock with some of these songs. I got to go back and listen to the songs that I have written down to see if I am rocking with them like that. But overall, I think it's the production, and I think it's because he had fun, or at least it sounded like he was having a good time making this project. Um, I think that's what really helped me. So yeah, I ended up giving it a five.
Oh, wow, blown
Yeah,
away, but very
blown
cool.
away.
Uh, the album scored out to about a 5.5 out of 10. It's just based on personal preference. I'd probably say that that feels about how I feel about it. I could see it raising up a little bit. I could also see it getting old really fast and kind of withering away from that 5.5. But how did it rate out for you?
So much higher than I expected, but it's still pretty low. It's a 4.1. To me, that actually seems incorrect. I feel like I enjoyed it a little bit more than a 4.1 as a whole. Like, I'd probably push it to like the higher fours. So I'm saying like 4.6, 4.8, somewhere in that range seems cool.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also just going to point out that it's a crazy year, at least for me, when I'm already ranking Playboy Cardi higher than Drake.
Well, I don't think that
It
was hard to
well,
do.
exactly. It's
Hear
just
what you're saying.
if
Pick it
if
up.
I'm telling if I'm telling myself this, if I'm going back in time to 2015 saying, "Hey," or 2018, whatever year Playboy really started popping, and saying, "Hey, you're going to like this Playboy Cardi album more than you'll like Drake." I'm going to be like, "Let's calm down
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit."
And
So,
it times are changing. Were you? It sounds like it's been a minute since you listened to this thing. Were you able to pick out a few tracks to review here at the end?
yeah,
Uh,
so you froze. I didn't hear a single thing you said.
oh, I said, walk me through your best, worst, and your most underrated.
Okay, so mine's a little bit different this time around because it's Playboy Cardi. I'm not
Yeah,
accustomed to favorite and underrated of Cardi. So
sure.
this is what I did. I have a least favorite, and that's going to be the intro. I don't know what it's called, but that very first track made me want to vomit.
Y-
It
Yeah,
was absolutely awful, and it should immediately be taken off of all streaming services as soon as possible. That'll bump up the album rating to a from a it'll jump up point 0.5 for me. If that song gets removed, point 0.5 added.
yeah,
It was just so terrible. I really thought I was going to be in for a really, really long experience. And I wasn't. I was pleasantly surprised after that first track. So
yeah,
that one was awful. This is what I did. I wrote down four songs that I actually enjoyed or like didn't mind, and ones that I have to go back to and listen to see if I really do like them. So
yeah,
the four I put down were Crush, Rather Lie, I still thought was good, Backdoor, and Charge Dem Hoes a Fee. That's a funny name.
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't know
yeah.
underrated. I don't really know the analytics for this kind of a project. I don't know in the slightest. I don't know what's best. I just know that those ones I didn't hate. So they deserve to be shouted out. So
Yeah. Overall, picks that I can pretty much agree with across the board there. Pop Out was just astonishingly bad. Uh, I don't want to be like harsher on it than, is necessary, but like really makes me want to say it's like the worst song I've heard in the past. No, 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 no. I take it back. I take it all back. It's the second worst after whatever the heck that ball garbage is. Um, on the pro one I enjoyed the most personally was Trim with Future on the latter half. I thought was really fun. I thought they both sounded great. My most underrated, it was a toss up. I did like Charge Them Women a Fee. I thought that was a good song. I thought Travis and Future also sounded great on it. And then my other most underrated was Wake Up Filthy, which terrible song. Like, I thought they both sounded him and Travis Scott, and I thought the beat was just infectious and fun, so I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, cool.
Uh, Times that you found some solid enjoyment out of this Cardi project. Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
I'm shocked myself. And then on top of that, the fact that I don't even remember that Future was on the one track that I shouted out. So the fact that not only in recent times have I said that Timeless was a top 10 song of the year, and then now coming
Yeah.
into March and saying that I actually really enjoyed something of Playboi Carti and of Future to that extent.
Yeah. Crazy.
We might have jumped universes again. Mandela effect.
And there you have it. Well, I think we got to wrap things up here. Uh, I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. It's one of those stretches where we'll just figure it out as we go. But until next time, goodbye.